You know what, Christina? Sarah's voice cut through the anniversary party like a knife through butter. The entire Mitchell family froze. Nobody had ever heard quiet little Sarah speak with such fire. At 187 pounds, she stood tall in that red dress, her transformation visible to everyone. For 2 years, you've made me feel like I wasn't good enough for this family. But you know what I realized? The problem was never me. Christina's face went white as a sheet. The woman who'd spent years tearing Sarah down was about to face the consequences of every cruel word she'd ever spoken. Y'all, let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell. Well, she wasn't a Mitchell back then. She was Sarah Johnson, just a little girl from Millerville, Alabama, where the cotton fields stretched as far as your eyes could see, and dreams felt as distant as the big city lights. Sarah's daddy, Frank, worked construction from dawn till dusk, his hands rough as sandpaper from years of honest work. Her mama, Betty, was a seamstress who could make magic with a needle and thread. But Lord knows, making ends meet was harder than threading a needle in the dark. Now Sarah was different from other kids. At 8 years old, she was already carrying more weight than her little heart should have had to bear. And I'm not just talking about the extra pounds that clung to her small frame like morning dew on grass. "Hey, Tubby, where you gonna hide today?" Tommy Richardson would holler across the schoolyard, his voice carrying that particular cruelty only children seem to master. Sarah would clutch her worn-out backpack tighter, her cheeks burning red as Alabama clay. "Just ignore them, sweetheart," Betty would whisper, braiding Sarah's hair with gentle fingers. But how do you ignore words that cut deeper than any knife? How do you tell a child that the world ain't always going to be kind when she's already learning that lesson the hard way? Every morning, Sarah would look in that cracked bathroom mirror and see nothing but flaws. The other kids had their fancy clothes and perfect smiles, while Sarah wore hand-me-downs that never quite fit right. She'd sit alone at lunch, watching the popular girls laugh and share secrets she'd never be part of. "Why can't I be pretty like Jenny Sue?" she'd ask her reflection, tears making tracks down her pudgy cheeks. But that mirror never had any answers, just showed her the same sad little girl who felt like she was carrying the weight of the whole world on her tiny shoulders. And you know what? That was just the beginning of Sarah's story. 'Cause sometimes the hardest battles we fight start when we're too young to even understand we're fighting at all. Before we continue this emotional story, put in the comments below which city you're watching from. It'll be a pleasure to give your comment a little heart. Now let's continue this exciting story. Now listen here, y'all. Sarah's story takes a turn when she's 25, working as a receptionist at Patterson Insurance in Birmingham. Lord knows she'd worked her tail off to get out of Millerville, but that little girl who got called names was still living inside her heart. That's when Michael Mitchell walked into her life, like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. He was an accountant, clean-cut with kind eyes and a smile that made Sarah's heart skip beats she didn't even know it could skip. "You're beautiful," he whispered on their third date, and Sarah nearly choked on her sweet tea. Beautiful? Her? The girl who'd spent her whole life hearing otherwise. "You don't have to say that," she mumbled, looking down at her hands. "But I mean it, Sarah. I really do." They got married 2 years later in a simple ceremony. Sarah wore her mama's old wedding dress, taken in by Betty's loving hands. Frank walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, whispering, "You deserve happiness, baby girl." But honey, marrying Michael meant joining the Mitchell family, and that was like stepping into a whole different world. They lived in Mountain Brook, where the houses had 2-car garages and manicured lawns that looked like something out of magazines. Michael's mama, Eleanor, was polite enough, but Sarah could feel those measuring eyes every Sunday dinner. His daddy, Robert, barely acknowledged her existence, too busy talking business with Michael. "So Sarah, dear," Eleanor would say, cutting her pot roast with surgical precision, "how are you adjusting to married life? It must be quite different from Millerville." That pause before her hometown's name felt like a slap. Sarah would force a smile and nod, feeling smaller than an ant at a picnic. The worst part, Sarah loved Michael something fierce, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing dress-up in a life that wasn't really hers. Every family gathering felt like a test she was bound to fail. And then there was Christina, Michael's sister, who was about to make Sarah's life a living nightmare. Now y'all, let me tell you about Christina Mitchell, Michael's younger sister, who could slice you up with a smile so sweet, you'd thank her for the cuts. Christina was everything Sarah wasn't. Tall, blonde, with a business degree from Auburn and a job at a fancy marketing firm downtown. She drove a shiny BMW and wore clothes that cost more than Sarah made in a month. "Oh, Sarah, honey," Christina would coo at family dinners, her voice dripping like poisoned honey. That dress is so interesting. Where'd you find it? I just love how you're not afraid to wear anything." Sarah would feel her cheeks burn, knowing full well that dress came from the clearance rack at JCPenney. Michael would squeeze her hand under the table, but he never said a word. "Bless your heart," Christina continued, cutting her green beans with surgical precision. "I just admire how confident you are. I mean, if I were your size, I'd probably hide in my house all day." Eleanor would clear her throat uncomfortably, but nobody ever told Christina to stop. Nobody ever defended Sarah. The worst part? Christina always delivered these attacks with such genuine-sounding concern that Sarah couldn't even call her out without looking paranoid. "I'm just worried about you, sweetie," Christina would say, placing a manicured hand on Sarah's arm. "Michael works so hard, and I know he wants you to be healthy and happy. Have you thought about maybe, trying one of those weight programs? I could help you find a good one." Every word was like a tiny dagger, carefully aimed at Sarah's deepest insecurities. Christina had a gift for finding exactly where it hurt most and pressing down hard. "I just want what's best for family," Christina would add with that perfect smile, making Sarah feel like the cruel one for being hurt. Night after night, Sarah would lie in bed replaying those conversations, feeling smaller and more worthless with each memory. And the worst part? She was starting to believe that maybe Christina was right. Y'all, some moments in life cut so deep, they change everything that comes after. For Sarah, that moment came on a Thursday evening in March, during what should have been just another family dinner. Eleanor had made her famous pot roast, and the whole Mitchell clan was gathered around that mahogany dining table. Robert, Eleanor, Michael, Christina, and Sarah. The conversation was flowing about work and weather, nothing special. That's when Christina set down her fork and looked straight at Sarah with those calculating blue eyes. "You know, Sarah," she began, her voice sweet as artificial honey, "I've been thinking about something, and I just have to say it because I care about this family." Sarah's stomach dropped like a stone in a well. She knew that tone. "I think you're being a little selfish, honey." Christina's words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. "I mean, look at poor Michael. He works so hard, and when you all go out together, well, people look and talk. You know they do." The entire table went silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. "Christina," Michael started, but his sister held up her hand. "No, Michael. Somebody needs to say this. It's hard on you, sweetie. I see how you try to make excuses when we go places. Oh, Sarah's not feeling well, or Sarah's tired. But we all know what's really going on." Sarah felt like she was drowning in her own chair. Every eye at that table was on her, and she wanted to disappear into the floor. "I just think," Christina continued, cutting another piece of roast like she was discussing the weather, "that if you really loved Michael, you'd make an effort. You'd care enough to change." That was it. That was the moment Sarah's heart broke into a million pieces, not just from Christina's cruelty, but from the deafening silence that followed. Nobody defended her. Not Michael, not Eleanor, not Robert. She was completely, utterly alone. And honey, that's when Sarah realized something had to change, because she couldn't live like this anymore. Now listen here, y'all. After that dinner from hell, Sarah spent 3 days in the deepest, darkest hole her soul had ever known. She called in sick to work, didn't answer her phone, didn't even get out of bed except to use the bathroom. Michael tried talking to her, bringing her sweet tea and toast, but Sarah just turned her face to the wall. How could she look at him knowing he'd sat there silent while his sister tore her apart? "Sarah, honey, please talk to me," he'd plead, but she couldn't find any words that didn't taste like poison. On that third day, Saturday morning, Sarah was lying there staring at the ceiling when something inside her just snapped. Not broke, snapped into place, like a puzzle piece finding its home. "No more," she whispered to the empty room. "No more hiding. No more being their punching bag." She dragged herself to the bathroom mirror, that same enemy she'd been fighting since childhood. But this time, instead of seeing all her flaws, she saw something different. She saw a woman who deserved better. "You're gonna change everything," she told her reflection. Everything. That afternoon, Sarah drove to Eastside Fitness, a little no-frills gym she'd passed 1,000 times, but never had the courage to enter. The place smelled like honest sweat and determination, nothing fancy about it. "Can I help you, ma'am?" The voice belonged to Marcus, a middle-aged black man with kind eyes and arms that looked like they could move mountains. "I need to change my life," Sarah said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. He'd probably seen 100 broken souls walk through those doors. "Well then," he said with a gentle smile, "let's get started. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and today's as good a day as any." For the first time in 3 days, Sarah felt something she'd almost forgotten existed: hope. And honey, that tiny spark was about to become a wildfire that would burn away everything that held her back. Y'all, let me tell you something about real change. It ain't pretty, it ain't fast, and it sure ain't easy. Sarah stepped on that scale at Dr. Carroll's office and saw 270 pounds staring back at her like a judgment she couldn't escape. "We're gonna take this one day at a time," Dr. Carroll said, her voice gentle but firm. She was a nutritionist who understood that food was more than fuel for folks like Sarah. It was comfort, punishment, and everything in between. That first month was pure torture. Sarah's new eating plan felt like wearing shoes 3 sizes too small. No more late-night ice cream when Christina's words echoed in her head. No more comfort food when the world felt too heavy to carry. Marcus had her doing exercises that made muscles she didn't even know existed. Scream for mercy. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body," he'd say. But Lord, Sarah felt like weakness was all she was made of. "I can't do this," she sobbed after a particularly brutal workout, mascara running down her cheeks like black rain. "Yes, you can," Marcus said simply. "You just did 30 minutes you couldn't do yesterday." After 4 weeks of agony, Sarah stepped on the scale expecting some miracle. 7 pounds. 7 measly pounds after a month of feeling like she was dying inside. "That's it," she whispered, her heart sinking like a stone. "Honey," Dr. Carroll said, putting a hand on her shoulder, "those 7 pounds took courage. That's more than most people ever find." But Sarah wanted to quit. Every morning, that bed felt like quicksand, trying to pull her back into the comfortable misery she knew. Christina's voice still lived in her head. "If you really loved Michael, I'm doing this for me," Sarah would tell herself in the mirror, even when she didn't believe it yet. 2 years. That's how long it would take to lose 104 pounds. 2 years of choosing hope over comfort, strength over surrender. And honey, every single day was a battle she almost lost. Now y'all, something amazing happens when you start fighting for yourself. You discover muscles you never knew existed. And I ain't talking about the ones in your arms and legs. By month 18, Sarah had lost 63 pounds and was down to 207. But the real change? That was happening inside her heart. Every morning at 5 a.m., looking at herself in that gym mirror, she was building something stronger than any bicep. She was building backbone. "Good morning, beautiful," she started telling her reflection, and slowly, she began to believe it. The first time Sarah spoke up at a Mitchell family dinner, you could have heard a pin drop in Alabama. Christina had just made another one of her little comments. "Oh, Sarah, you're looking different. Are you feeling all right, honey?" Old Sarah would have shrunk into her chair like a flower in winter. But this Sarah looked Christina straight in the eye and said, "I'm feeling better than I have in years, actually. Thanks for asking." The table went quiet. Michael nearly choked on his sweet tea. "Well," Christina stammered, clearly thrown off her game. "I just meant—" "I know exactly what you meant," Sarah interrupted, her voice calm as Sunday morning. "And I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing just fine." Eleanor cleared her throat uncomfortably. Robert suddenly found his mashed potatoes fascinating. But Sarah felt like she was breathing real air for the first time in her life. After dinner, Michael pulled her aside. "What's gotten into you, Sarah? You've never talked to Christina like that before." "Maybe," Sarah said, looking at her husband with new eyes. "I should have started a long time ago." Each pound she lost seemed to add strength to her voice. Each workout taught her that she could endure more than she'd ever imagined. And honey, when you discover you're stronger than you thought, everything else starts to change too. Christina's little digs. They still came, but now they bounced off Sarah like rain off a tin roof. Because Sarah was finally learning the most important lesson of all. She didn't need anyone's permission to take up space in this world. Y'all, some nights are made for settling scores, and Eleanor and Robert's 25th anniversary party was one of those nights. Sarah walked into that country club wearing a red dress that hugged every curve of her new 187-pound body. And honey, she looked like a woman who'd found her power. The party was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking, fancy folks laughing, the whole Mitchell family putting on their best show. Sarah had lost 83 pounds, but more importantly, she'd found something worth more than gold, her self-respect. Christina was holding court by the dessert table, telling some story about her latest business triumph. When she spotted Sarah across the room, That familiar smirk spread across her face like poison ivy. "Well, well," Christina said loud enough for half the party to hear. "Look who's trying to reinvent herself. Sarah, honey, that dress is certainly bold. Are you sure it's not a little tight?" This was it. This was the moment Sarah had been building toward for 2 years of sweat, tears, and determination. "You know what, Christina?" Sarah's voice cut through the party chatter like a church bell on Sunday morning. The room started to quiet, sensing something big was about to happen. "For 2 years you've made me feel like I wasn't good enough for this family. You've disguised cruelty as concern, meanness as care. But you know what I realized? The entire party had gone silent now. Even the band stopped playing. The problem was never me," Sarah continued, her voice steady as stone. "The problem was you feeling so small inside that you had to tear down someone else to feel big." Christina's face went white as fresh cotton. "Sarah, I don't know what you think. I think," Sarah said, stepping closer, "that everyone here deserves to know who you really are behind that sweet smile. A person who gets pleasure from hurting others." Michael was staring like he'd never seen his wife before. Eleanor looked like she wanted to disappear. "I'm done being your victim, Christina. I'm done shrinking so you can feel tall." And honey, in that moment, Sarah didn't just win a battle. She won her whole life back. Now listen here, y'all. Sometimes the person who's been hurting you is the one who's been hurting the most. After that anniversary party, Christina's whole world came crashing down like a house of cards in a tornado. For 2 years, Christina had built her sense of worth on making Sarah feel small. When that foundation crumbled, she didn't know who she was anymore. She started missing work, stopped returning phone calls, and according to Eleanor, spent most days in her expensive apartment crying into her silk pillowcases. "She's having some kind of breakdown," Michael told Sarah one evening. "Mom's worried sick." 3 months after the party, Sarah got a phone call she never expected. "Sarah, it's Christina." The voice was broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd tormented her for years. "I need to see you, please. I know I don't deserve it, but please." They met at a little coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. Christina looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Dark circles under her eyes, clothes that didn't fit right, hands shaking as she reached for her coffee cup. "I've been seeing a therapist," Christina began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Martinez. She's been helping me understand things about myself I never wanted to face." Sarah waited, saying nothing. "I was cruel to you," Christina continued, tears starting to flow. "Deliberately, systematically cruel. And the worst part? I knew exactly what I was doing." "Why?" Sarah asked simply. Christina's face crumpled like wet paper. "Because my mother did it to me. Every day of my childhood, I was never good enough, never smart enough, never pretty enough. She made me feel worthless, and instead of healing from it, I passed it on to you. I made someone else feel the way she made me feel, and I told myself it was normal, that it was just how families worked." For the first time in her life, Sarah saw Christina not as a powerful tormentor, but as a broken woman who'd been carrying her own wounds for years. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so deeply, truly sorry." And honey, that's when Sarah had to make the hardest choice of all. Y'all, the hardest thing in this world ain't losing weight or standing up to bullies. It's learning to forgive someone who broke pieces of your heart you didn't even know existed. Sarah looked across that coffee shop table at Christina's tear-stained face and felt something she never expected. Compassion, not for what Christina had done, but for the hurt little girl inside her who'd been carrying wounds for 30 years. "I forgive you," Sarah said quietly, and watched Christina's face crumble with relief. 6 months later, Sarah stepped on the scale one final time, 166 pounds. She'd lost 104 pounds and found something worth more than any number. She'd found herself. But honey, that wasn't even the best part of her story. Sarah started leading a support group at Riverside Community Church every Thursday evening. Women would come, shy, broken, carrying their own Christina-shaped wounds, and Sarah would tell them what Marcus had told her: "You're stronger than you think." At work, her new confidence earned her a promotion to office manager. She wasn't hiding behind her desk anymore. She was leading meetings, making decisions, taking up space like she belonged there. And Christina? She kept going to therapy, started volunteering with women who'd survived emotional abuse, and slowly began healing the generational wounds that had poisoned her heart. The two women weren't best friends, but they'd found something better. They'd found peace. "You know what I learned?" Sarah told her support group one Thursday evening. looking around at faces that reminded her of her younger self. True strength isn't about getting revenge on the people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let their pain become your prison. Every single one of you deserves respect, deserves love, deserves to take up space in this world. Don't let anyone, not family, not friends, not anybody, convince you otherwise. As Sarah drove home that night, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror and smiled. The woman looking back wasn't just thinner, she was whole. She'd taken every cruel word, every moment of humiliation, every tear she'd cried, and transformed it all into something beautiful, the power to lift others up. And that, honey, is what real victory looks like. Sarah's story shows us that no matter how deep our wounds, how cruel the voices that try to diminish us, or how hopeless our situation seems, we all have the power to transform our lives. True change starts from within, with the decision to stop accepting less than we deserve. Are you ready to silence the voices that tell you you're not enough? Are you prepared to transform your pain into power, just like Sarah did? What would your life look like if you refused to let anyone else's opinion define your worth? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to never miss these powerful, life-changing stories. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now to continue watching more inspiring transformations that will motivate you to write your own comeback story.